ho, what a week it has been. South Africa shedding more jobs. Donald Trump issuing the F word over Iran and Israel. And of course, those extortionists we spoke about last week, Saashispa. Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Welcome to another episode of The Talking Point here on The Truth Report. My name, of course, is Big Daddy Liberty, your favorite fat boy, Usihle Ngobese. And as always, when I start a show, I remind you of what to do. Smash that like button. Yebo, do it right now. Hit that like button and subscribe to both the Truth Report channel and, of course, the Big Daddy Liberty channel on YouTube. Now, enough with the jibber jabber. How about we look at the week that was and get straight into the news? In what can be only described as high drama in the council houses here at the city of Johannesburg, where Mthatha Morero, that of course is the mayor of the city of Johannesburg, the ANC mayor in that coalition, of course, of the ANC, IFP, PA, and of course ActionSA, along with other smaller parties, was set to face a motion of no confidence being charged ahead by the Democratic Alliance, the DA, saying perhaps what most Joburg residents are saying at the moment, which is that Joburg as a city is a you-know-what hole. And again, that is the state of the city of Johannesburg right now. It can only be described as almost chaos. You know, I sometimes have this mental image of Mthatha Morero, the mayor, you know, in that Bane mask, fomenting chaos in the city. And, you know, the DA, well, can we call them Batman in this situation? But nonetheless, what am I talking about? That motion of no confidence being put forward in the council house. Again, Times Live wrote this up quite nicely, saying the following. Now, the DA accused Morero of failing to restore basic service delivery and presiding over a deteriorating administration in South Africa's economic hub. That's Johannesburg. During Wednesday's council vote last week, 75 councillors supported the motion, while 144 voted against it. Now, here's the interesting number. 43 abstained. The councillors who abstained from this voting process, the 43, the yeses were 75, and the noes, of course, were 144, end of quote. Now again, who were those 43 councillors who chose to abstain? Now some may argue there's a bit of cowardice on the side of those particular councillors when seemingly the consensus amongst ordinary Joburgers is that Mthatha Morero has to go, but those councillors I'm alluding to were from the ActionSA political party. Their chairperson, Michael Beaumont, ahead of that vote, held a press conference effectively trying to set out the gobbledygooky, muddled position of why ActionSA, which is a part of the coalition government in the city of Johannesburg, decided not to vote against Mthatha Morero, who they claim they also don't like, but chose to abstain their votes instead, thereby having seen, if you will, that motion of no confidence against Morero not passing. That is the situation that you saw here. And what did they get in return? What did the ASA or ActionSA political party get in return for abstaining in this vote? Well, their speaker in their house, Unobuhle Mthembu, a casualty of that dilly-dallying by ActionSA, where the ANC then turned on ASA, voting out Unobuhle Mthembu as speaker and effectively them installing a new speaker in the house. What a odd situation to have actually befell Johannesburg at a time when ordinary residents of that city are looking for leadership, crying for leadership that will turn that city around. I suppose at this stage, the opportunity we'll get to make any meaningful change in Johannesburg will be the local government elections in a year and a half from now. Ziyakhala in Gauteng, where a coalition of Operation Dudula, that's a civic society organization that is firmly against illegal immigration in this country, and of course some political parties, the more prominent being the Patriotic Alliance, took it upon themselves to block access to clinics and hospitals across Gauteng province. And who were they actually keeping out from these hospitals? Well, if you didn't have an ID or could prove you were South Africans, well, then it was tickets for you. You were not allowed effectively into those facilities, with these organizations citing that our healthcare facilities are overburdened because of, quote, illegal immigration. Now, whether that is true or not is debatable. We'd have to see the numbers around that, but there were some numbers that were cited. I'm going to play a clip of exactly one of those activists from the Patriotic Alliance leading us in an almost top billing style in a public hospital, showing us just how empty Chayumoya, the hospital, looked simply because they removed, as they put it, illegal immigrants. Watch.
So we were here to correct that, and we were here to enforce Section 17. So now, these are the results. I want you to come with me so that you can see for yourself how empty the place is. So you can just look at how empty the place is. We're doing the Lord's work. Our healthcare workers now can be able to do their job, and they are not going to be overworked, especially when we are in charge. So yeah, you can look at the place. You can see for yourself. This is Hillbrow Clinic. We were here last Friday. This place was full. This place was full, so you can just see for yourself. And in fact, earlier on, we've removed we had 94 women that were pregnant, and out of the 94, only 4 were South Africans. So this is the situation that we are faced with as a country. Our laws are disrespected, and we are saying it's not going to happen on our watch as the Patriotic Alliance. We are here enforcing the laws.
Again, that number she cites is actually quite a staggering one. Now, I must say this, I have not verified what she's saying to be true or not. So at face value, I'll take her word for it, which is of the particular maternity ward section of that hospital, the 94 pregnant women that she found in there, or this grouping of Operation Dudula and the Patriotic Alliance found in the clinic, they chased away 90 of those individuals, citing that they were foreign nationals, and shockingly, only 4 of them were supposedly locals. Again, I can't verify that number, but if it is anything to go by, well, it might be an interesting scenario where it may very well be that our public health facilities are effectively stressed insofar as the numbers due to a large number of foreign nationals. Again, notice how I'm saying foreign nationals, and I'm not saying illegal immigrants, because I don't know what the status of those individuals were. And that's perhaps my criticism of the Operation Dudula and the Patriotic Alliance as they embark on this campaign against foreign nationals accessing public healthcare facilities. How do they know that these are illegal immigrants? And I suppose the larger question is, should it really matter in a country of the rule of law? And what do our laws say at the moment? Well, they're quite clear. Access to healthcare in this country is a constitutional right in Chapter 2 of the Constitution, and it says all have the right to access healthcare. It doesn't just exclusively suggest that only South Africans have access to these facilities. So that it begs the question, is this the most appropriate way to conduct this particular gripe? That is, if your gripe is against illegal immigration, is this the most appropriate way? Is it a humane way to do it this way? That's a question I'm going to pose to the Operation Dudula and Patriotic Alliance types, because they may face legal ramifications for what they have done. Now, again, let me not act as though there is no context to this. There is a larger context, but when it comes to the issue between illegal immigration in this country, which is a problem, don't get me wrong, it is a problem. Our borders are way, way too porous, and people are streaming in, and we don't even know who these individuals are. So don't get me wrong, insofar as there are elements of the criticism that I do agree with, it is exactly that part. Immigration in this country needs to follow the rule of law, where at the moment it's lawless, if I'm to be brutally honest. But nonetheless, the point I was making is this. Insofar as the criticism is of illegal immigration, one should not pretend that there are not tensions in communities across the country on this particular matter. In fact, I'll take you to the small dorpie of Carltonville, just on the outskirts of Johannesburg, where there were interesting and rather violent scenes playing out in that part of the world, where locals in Carltonville were complaining about the spate of Pakistani nationals who run a lot of the spaza shops and shops in the area, preventing locals from opening their own shops. And again, the scenes, as I said, were quite violent. Listen to one of the complainants speaking about this particular incident, which led to even gunshots being fired.
The Pakistanis was being told by us, saying, no, we're not allowed to open a shop. So they refused us from opening the shop. They told us since 3 weeks, we're not allowed to open shop. So we still went on. We busy revenating and all of that. Then they still carry on telling us they will assault us if we open the shop. They'll show us what they'll do if I open the shop. We've been told the following day we must go to the court and get a harassment form. As on our way just to come out in the street behind Pick n Pay in Cartonville, they block us, they force us to stop. The cars was parked all around us and they forced us to stop. As my husband get out and he start running, they shoot at him. And then when I tried to phone the cops, the main person, Barber, the Pakistani, he grabbed me and he threw me down on the floor. I hit my head against the bakki's wheel. And as I stood up and I started to run, I heard the gunshots. Two shots was being fired. Then I ran towards my husband by the CPI officers. He ran in there. So the Pakistanis all was there. The police arrived and all. Then they opened a case. They were arrested. 2 of the 5 only was arrested. They never get the other 3 still.
Now, again, you heard that story from this young lady alleging, if you will, that these foreign nationals, Pakistani as she alleges, were effectively acting like a if you will, I'm going to link to what I spoke about last week. They are effectively trying to extort locals out of operating in the area. They're acting like a mob, if you will. And again, I will say what I said last week. These are the instances where law enforcement in this country need to step the F up, because the situation is the moment you have a vacuum created by SAPs not playing their role, then other thugs and goons fill that vacuum with their version of violence for their particular reasons. I've always said this and I'll continue saying it. Insofar as there are these tensions in communities across the country, we should not pretend, especially those of us who live in these ivory towers that are far removed from communities like these, we shouldn't pretend that people don't have a significant problem with the growing number of foreign nationals, whether they're illegal or not, in their communities. If there's one thing ordinary people don't like, especially those who live in communities that are long established where everybody knows each other, is rapid change. And that rapid change happening through the influx of individuals who culturally are not even aligned to you as a community, who don't even speak your language. It creates an automatic alienation that leads to this kind of conflict. So again, I'll ask the question, how do we resolve this particular matter? Do we go the Operation Dudula direction, where effectively we form our own mobs and we protect, in inverted commas, our infrastructure in this country from foreign nationals? Is that really is that who we are as South Africans? Or do we use the law? If we have a significant problem as South Africans with the influx and the number of foreign nationals coming in, then should we not be using the law to set limits on this, or to set a change in policy? That's the question I'm going to leave you with as you ask yourself the question, do we do Dudula or use the law? Oh, as we say in Zulu, ya sholeonto. Again, I take you to the Eastern Cape, where police in that part of the world had a violent shootout, leaving 6 alleged extortionists dead by the side of the R61 that's between Engcobo and Mthatha. Now, I emphasize Mthatha because we spoke about that particular dorpi last week on the show, where we were talking about the floods in that part of the world. And even in that disaster, where 2,000 people displaced, hundreds of people having lost their lives, you had the spate of a mob, or rather a gang of extortionists, basically taking issue with a aid group delivering water, saying, how dare you deliver water to these people for free when we could be doing it at our extortionist rates? Now, that issue, I argued at the time, needed law enforcement to step in and deal with it decisively. So the question becomes, were they listening to your favorite fat boy in the Eastern Cape? Were the police like, yeah, he's right, Big Daddy's right, we need to shoot these boys up? Because effectively, not more than just a week later, you have exactly this result. 6 alleged extortionists being shot dead after the police tried to effect an arrest, and they stepped out of their vehicle and had a shoot 'em up party. I'm going to read from Times Live, which quoted the brigadier spokesperson of the SAPs in the Eastern Cape, having said the following. Now, that's police spokesperson Brigadier Nobuntu Katana, who said police stopped the vehicle during an intelligence-driven operation at around 5:30 p.m. That's last week on Monday, of course. And the quote, the suspects, of course, stepped out of the vehicle and opened fire on police members. Officers returned fire in self-defense, resulting in a fatal shooting of all 6 suspects, Kachana said. Now, the IPID, that's the Independent Police Investigative Directorate, will investigate the incident. End of quote. Now, I raise this issue because, again, leave aside for a moment, and let me just quickly say this. Shout out to the SAPs, man, for sorting this out. I said it last week. You know, sometimes police need to take that KZN Mkwanazi route when they're dealing with violent criminals, because at the end of the day, those violent criminals are aiming their violence, aiming their weapons at us, the law-abiding citizens. And we too need someone who can be our defender against violent criminality. But nonetheless, as I was saying, this particular issue took a very interesting turn when on social media, and obviously covered by the media later, when it emerged as to who one of those deceased of the 6 suspects alleged extortionist was. That, of course, was alleged to be the Santaco chairperson in the Eastern Cape. Santaco, of course, being the South African National Taxi Council. EWN wrote this one up, illuminating this particular issue. And I'm going to come back in a moment to maybe give my view as to why this is incredibly problematic. But nonetheless, EWN wrote it up saying, now, the Santaco chairperson named here is Uzola Yolelo, who was among the 6 men shot and killed during the police operation. Yolelo had been a prominent figure in the taxi industry, rising through the ranks from being a car washer and conductor to the national chairperson of Santaco. He held various positions in the Eastern Cape before taking over the national role in 2022. End of quote. Now, there's something to be said here about Santaco. Now, again, y'all know me on my show. I'm a big fan of the taxi industry. This is a 90 billion rand a year industry. It is 100% owned by currently disadvantaged individuals, because I hate that expression of previously. How many times are you going to be previously disadvantaged? If you're currently disadvantaged individuals who made serious money from this industry, and I say kudos to that industry. But the one part about this industry that I absolutely loathe, and I think South Africans share my view on this, and no, it's not them cutting you off in traffic, but it's effectively the lawlessness of this particular industry, where criminals find it very easy, seemingly, to be a part of the formal structures of Santaco. That is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. For an industry that transports millions of South Africans, especially poor South Africans, on a day-to-day basis, it boggles the mind that the people who run that industry have within them, that is, criminals in their midst. And for Santaco to not come out and actually say, you know what, as an organization, we're going to be leading the charge in cleaning up our own structures, says a lot about Santaco at the moment. And these are the sort of things that ordinary South Africans have to start questioning, especially because, again, let me not mince my words, we do need taxis in this country. They play a vital role in shepherding individuals who are going to work, or even those of us who are trying to find work. A taxi is sometimes your lifeline insofar as getting to opportunity around the country. And it's on that basis that we should be placing a pressure on Santaco in this regard. Now, again, on this particular matter, a last one, which again, the twists and turns in this story are actually, if it wasn't such a serious issue, would be quite amusing. One of the vocal individuals who came out and issued a statement after this particular shooting was the Abatembu Nation in the Eastern Cape, where they basically said, hey man, that homie who died in that shooting is not one of us. they pulled a Kendrick Lamar on this particular story and said he's not like us, denying, of course, the claim that was made by one of these individuals who are the alleged extortionists, that he was a local chief of the Abatembu in the area. I'm going to quote Algoa FM, which wrote the story up and gave us a snippet of the statement by the Abatembu chief and kingdom, who seemingly was celebrating that these individuals are gone. Now, in a strongly worded statement issued on Tuesday last week, the Royal House of the Abatembu clarified that Uzola Yolelo Bishop was never a recognized traditional leader. Quoting their statement, it says, "It is a matter of public record that the Royal House of Abatembu took legal steps against Mr. Yolelo Bishop Zola. Before the Mthatha High Court," the statement read, the court found that he had no legal standing as leader of the Mthatha West area, either as a chief or an ordinary community leader. End of quote. Now, of course, if you've been watching social media, in the wake of this incident, you're seeing people from Mthatha and really the Eastern Cape celebrate this particular incident. It clearly is a massive issue in that part of the world. Extortionists and these gangs, who are basically a law unto themselves, police, if you will, are walking out from this one as a bit of a champ of the week. All right, guys, in the last of the local news from last week, you can probably read from my somber tone, we as a country once again have added to the number of unemployed South Africans. Now, I've always said this, if there is one thing that can literally change the future of this country, it's not fancy speeches by politicians or government action or wonderful plans that are often thrown in our faces of, future cities and, high-speed rail and all sorts of nonsense that was sold as a pipe dream. But the actual thing that can really make a meaningful difference in the life of the individual out there is a job. It's the ability to wake up every morning and say, I'm going to do something productive, to which I'm going to get an income for that. And from that income, I'm able to build household savings. And from those household savings, buy a quality of life that improves the life standard of my family, the people I care about. A job is the most central thing, in changing the economic life of this country. And it is that element that we as South Africa are failing fellow South Africans. And you'll notice I didn't say government. Government doesn't have the role of creating jobs in this country. Government is meant to create the space for us in the private sector to create employment. And it's that failure, if you will, of us as a society that sees 74,000 more South Africans added to the unemployment queues. Now again, I have to turn to EWN, which wrote up those somber numbers that came out last week, saying the following. Now, Statistics South Africa, that's StatSA, released the latest numbers showing the loss of jobs in comparison to the first quarter of last year, that's 2024, releasing these numbers last week on Tuesdays. Industries such as trade, community services and mining took the hardest knock, where 52,000 jobs were lost in the trade industry, accounting for 70% of job losses. Community services and mining were also casualties in the first quarter of 2025, shaving off 17,000 and 4,000 jobs respectively. End of quote. Guys, it's a bloodbath out there. Gobi. And again, when I talk about this issue, I'm not giving it some sort of, labor economic high-level analysis. No, I'm talking about fellow South Africans who, there are South Africans in this country, there are children in this country who have lived their entire lives having never seen a parent wake up to go to work. That's the reality here. There are individuals who are scrimping and literally scrounging for just the ability to put some form of bread on the table at the end of the day. And why? Because we have deprived those individuals of the ability, the dignity, if you will, of being able to earn an income, a job. Now, you and I who are in the upper middle class, or again, look at me be ambitious, upper middle class, really, Big Daddy, all right. But nonetheless, you and I who are in the middle class or even the working class, now we can take that for granted because we know, end of the month, income's coming in. Sure, little pay slip, and then I'm at debit order. Start going off immediately after that. You and I can joke about this, you and I have the privilege of this, but there are millions of South Africans out there who simply don't have that opportunity. And for them, life in this country is incredibly difficult. Incredibly difficult. So that 74,000 individuals added to this unemployment queue, for me, is the crisis of the day. All right, we head over to international news as our last news piece for what happened in the news week that was. Donald Trump, let's just say the homie Donald Trump, 47, is not feeling, on the one hand, his friends Israel, and on the other, his enemy, mortal enemy, Iran, where speaking to journalists just before he hopped on a helicopter, this is the expletive he used in describing those two countries violating a ceasefire.
You know what, we basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
Yeah, that's right. You heard the homie issue that F-bomb, clearly expressing a frustration with these two particular countries where, after he had announced that very successful bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities in those 3 locations, something which I'm in full support of, because I don't believe Iran should be having a nuclear weapon in that part of the world, given their track record as things stand of supporting destabilizing forces in the Middle East. But again, that's another issue for another day, albeit linked to this one. After the bombing of those 3 facilities, seeing the destruction of that nuclear program, Trump had issued a call for these 2 partners to now come together and actually hold a ceasefire. No more bombs, no more dying, no more death in that part of the world. The very thing that arguably, if you are a sane, sober, moral, prudent individual, would definitely support. No more dying in that part of the world. Trump wanting peace in that part of the world, expressing that frustration, as you saw, as Israel and Iran continue to bomb each other in an almost, how can I describe it? When your parents say, all right, if any of you do any more fighting, Zakala, and you get that little one slap in at the end. That's effectively what happened, leading to that frustration from Trump. But nonetheless, this week, Trump having announced that he's going to be meeting with Iran in order to iron out that peace, or rather ceasefire agreement. I want to quickly read here from CNBC that wrote up this particular story, giving us a sense of what we might see this coming week. Trump says the U.S. plan to talk to Iran next week. This article, of course, was from last week, but effectively this week, and that the 2 countries may, quote, sign an agreement. He then follows up and says an agreement is not necessarily necessary, as he put it, but the only thing we'd be asking for is what we were asking for before. That's Trump speaking about, we want no nuclear. That's according to Donald Trump at a press conference at the NATO summit last week. End of quote. Now, on this particular issue, Trump is 100% correct. And it's one thing which I fully support when it comes to Donald Trump. And that is peace in that region, number one. And also, insofar as a country like Iran, no nuclear weapons for that country, because they've demonstrated, as I said earlier on, a willingness to support terror groupings in that part of the world. Groupings which have openly avowed to want to annihilate Jews in that part of the world, annihilate Israel. And a country like Iran, which even itself, as part of their official slogan, much like Nike's Just Do It, Iran has death to America as their slogan in that part of the world. So of course, no one would want them to have nuclear weapons. And I'm in full support of any ceasefire agreement that will be discussed this week, brokered by Trump, which will guarantee peace in that part of the world. All right, it's that time of the show where we look at the past week and decipher who is a champ of the week. Will we have a champ of the week, someone who's done something great, excellent, commendable, or a Moemish, a loser of the week? What do we have this week? We have a Moemish. And who is our Moemish of the week? Nobuhle Mthembu, the former speaker of the Johannesburg Council, and of course, the chairperson of ActionSA, Michael Beaumont. They are the Moemish of the week. And why are those 2 individuals the Moemish of the week? Well, because of the story we perhaps led with in their attempt to sit on the fence on the issue of getting rid of the deeply unpopular Dada Morero, that's the mayor of Johannesburg. They did, as I'm suggesting, sit on the fence, and even in doing that, it cost them their own speaker position. Nobuhle Mthembu voted out after the ANC said, who? You didn't vote for me? Watch, I'll show you. And they literally got rid of their ActionSA speaker in that council, which begs the question, what were all those theatrics by Michael Beaumont, the chairperson of ActionSA, all about? The big announcement that, we're going to do nothing in this council meeting, and doing nothing is fantastic because it'll get us a result. What result? Dude, your own person paid a high cost for that, and now you have even less influence over the same governing coalition that you were part of, that you effectively propped up and supported, that you voted for Dada Morero to give the city of Johannesburg and the residents of the city that particular useless mayor of an individual. So that this decision, having come back to bite you in the bum, makes you the Moemish of the week. All right, folks, that's it for this episode of Talking Point. Only here on The Truth Report with moi, or Big Daddy Liberty. Remember, leave me a comment. I go through the comments. Let me know what you think about the stories that you saw this week. Were any of them illuminating? Did you find out anything new? Let me know in the comments. Is there something you disagree with? Guys, let me know. I read the comments. And remember, smash that like button on The Truth Report's YouTube page. And hey, don't forget to go over to my YouTube page and like that too. Help me reach my goal of 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. And as always, we'll be watching.